Architecture Week 6 is all about labor. So let's start off with Utopia is a genre, a type of book or manifesto, which is speculative and political critique for the new goals of a society. Started off with Thomas More's Utopia in 1516, which described a wonderful new society. It critiqued temporary society by talking about how great something else was. Some utopias were actually built, just like the Salt Works, which used building and design and the spatial organization of a place in order to fundamentally change the social organization of a place. Just like worker housing, company towns were built off blue-collar, bureaucratic, and managerial labor, just like factory towns and production centers in the mid-20th century. The corporate campus utilized keeping workers close, and they were isolated, so they never wanted to leave. Utopian projects reimagined the organization of the state under capitalism, just like the Palace of Versailles. Simply, the manager has preempted the place of the prince. Under the utopian socialism idea was reimagining the structure of society. Workers were playing a central role with the transfer with the means of production. One might not need to ever be far from their access to work from their own access of power with their right to work. This rewarded each person according to their capital, labor, and talent. It was more like a city in the form of a building, just like the Palace of Versailles. Lively public life, which the design created. The Familia Stair was a model activist utopia that believes in progress, with new technology and new systems, new ways of building and organizing space, that life in society can continue to improve, which took out the negative things that capitalism affected. So America was the founding place of this utopian promise because of the cheap land, and America was just seen as a utopia. This developed Shaker villages, which was like a Christian vacation where hard work on earth connected you to God. They created bilateral buildings, which were symmetrical, a lot of craftsmanship in woodworking. This architecture policed the people. Communitarianism chose this life for themselves. Public housing in the 20th to 21st century, tenement buildings, collective dwellings, this came out of necessity. There was a lack of sanitation, lack of regulation. This movement was created where housing was looked at as a human right, so new design had to be formed. The Frankfurt Kitchen came out of this time. It was focused on ergonomics. It was efficient, less movement, which freed the new women, which created more time for leisure. There is a huge homeless population in the bigger cities of Los Angeles and other urban areas. There was a housing shortage. ADU was created to combat this problem. These were little buildings that were less than 1,000 square feet on properties that were already existing. To convince people to build these projects, there was less regulations and codes and also tax break incentives. Incremental buildings were kind of a self-help type of architecture. They were designed in response to scarcity of materials. And incomplete buildings encouraged people to finish the rest in their own way. This was a generator of new wealth. People had their own stake in the community and their own equity. This was working inside of capitalism, which was a way to change society incrementally under the utopian model. Second lecture stressed the changing role of the worker in architectural production. The way architecture is being made, the way everything else is being made, is always changing due to machine production. Architecture is the critique of industrialization. Changing the ways of building and making is going to be focused around the idea of craft, which is the skill, quality, and tradition. Industrialization interrupted these traditions. Items became cheap from the assembly line. Workers became the machine. It was a new organization. The Cologne Cathedral in Germany stressed the importance of the mason, which was an architect, builder, an artist, and an engineer all at once. The Victorian mass production sees a connection between aesthetic beauty, function, and the conditions of labor. It shifts the way that we think about authorship, about the makers of these buildings, and who makes architecture. One of the questions that was rising was, who is the architect worker? The architect in the mid-late 19th century was a new idea. This was a self-study, it was self-taught, and one of the questions was, why hasn't architects unionized before? One of the answers is the draftsman looks forward in time when he will be an architect himself. Into the open market, he'll be an architect of the future. Architect Hadid claimed that construction workers weren't really a part of her job, and it wasn't her job to oversee them because she couldn't possibly oversee everything. She received a lot of pushback for these statements. In this last quote, Morris wants you to give up the middle-class existence. Okay, that'll wrap it up for this video.